cows. He said, I'll tell you what you do. You find you a man that in these 7 years of plenty, he'll buy up all the excess corn and he'll store it in the cities of Egypt. And then when the 7 years of famine come, there'll be corn to live on. He looked at old Joseph. He said, you're the man. I don't think we could find a man like you, got the Spirit of God in him. Ladies and gentlemen, the person that chooses to be the Savior of that family will. You may have to wait a while. You may have to wait a year. Joseph was 17 years old when his brothers sold him. When Pharaoh made him prime minister, he was 30 years old. It was 12 years later. But that man that lived right, that man that showed love, that man whose dream was for the well-being of his family is finally promoted. My God, somebody say amen. Has got a plan. You just hold on to your dream because God knows how to make it happen. And then I'm just relating the story, and we're going to make a few points here. Then famine got so bad in Canaan, Jacob sent those scoundrels of his and said, go down to Egypt and buy corn. They went down there and they saw that man, and Joseph recognized him. But he spoke to him in the Egyptian language with an interpreter where they wouldn't know him. And he dealt harshly with him. He dealt harshly with him. Why? Because sometimes love has to be tough. He dealt harshly with him. He said, who are you? They said, we're 10. There was 10 of them. Joseph was there. Benjamin was home. He said, we're all the sons of one father. He said, is your father alive? He said, yes, our father's alive and our mother, and we have a little brother at home. Joseph said, no, you're spies. You've just come down here to spy out there. And he said, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all 10 of you in jail. And then I'm going to send back to Canaan, and I'm going to tell your father to send that baby brother of yours up here. And you're going to stay in jail till he gets here. And then I'll know you're telling the truth. So he locked up for 3 days. And then finally he came and he said, all right, I'm going to let 9 of you go home, but I'm keeping 1. He was going to make sure they came back. So he locked up Simeon, Cynthia. Tough. They got down to the inn on the way home, opened their sacks to feed their donkeys, and there's all their money in their sack. You know the story. Now they're thieves, and he had the money put back. Tough. They brought Benjamin. You know the story. They brought Benjamin. I'm telling you, he was tough on those boys. He was bad. You know why? Sometimes love has to be tough. Sometimes love has to say, no, ma'am. Sometimes love has to say, no, sir. Sometimes love says, ain't gonna be none of that in my house. Sometimes love has to say, you ain't going there and come here and eat my groceries. We were sitting at the bar once, and I was sitting at the bar once with those 3 boys before Scott and Kim married, and something had come up about some hoodlum or somebody, I don't even know who it was, that had done something. And one of my boys looked at me and said, Daddy, what would you do if we ever did that? I said, you'd never spend another night in this house. Mean. Never cracked a smile. After that meeting was over, John and I were alone somewhere, and she looked at me and she said, whew, that was mean. She said, did you mean it? I said, I don't know where I did it. But that's beside the point. They think and neither one of them ever committed that act, I can tell you. I don't know where I meant it or not, but they thought I did, Brother James, and that was well enough. Tough love. Then there came a day, finally, they came back. They brought Benjamin. They sent him home. A servant went after him, and he said, ain't this a fine how do you do? Joseph had you to his house for lunch, and one of you have stolen his silver cup. No, not us. And they said, you look in our sacks, and if you find that silver cup, the one that cup's with can go back and be his slave forever. And they opened Benjamin's sack, and there was that silver cup. Tough love. They all turned around and came back. And he said, the rest of you can go home, but the man that took, and he said, that man that had my silver cup in his sack is going to stay with me as my prisoner. I know you're saying, why in the world would he do that to his little brother? He wasn't doing that to his little brother Benjamin. He remembered 10 brothers that sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And he said, I want to know if their hearts changed. Brother Lamar said, I want to know if they'll walk off and leave another brother like they sold me. If they'll go home without Benjamin like they went home without me. Brother, but they stepped up and said, no, sir, we can't leave our little brother. Joseph wept. He said, I'm Joseph. You know the story. Go home, get my papa, and went home to get Jacob. And they said, Jacob, Joseph is alive. And he said, I don't believe it. But they showed him that wagon with an Egyptian license plate on it. And he said, he must be. And then you can read it. I'm not going to take time because I got something else I want to read. But you can read it in 46, 47, 48 chapters of Genesis, where there was a great family reunion. And Joseph fell on the face of his father and wept. And finally, after better than 12 years, the dream for his family came true. The man that saved his family. Now, I told you that story to bring you to the point. You said, preacher, I would really love for all of my family to be saved. I would really love for all of us to be in heaven, but if it's going to cost me all that, if I'm going to have to go through stuff like Joseph did, dear God, I don't think I can pay that kind of price. I come to ask you a question. Is your family worth it? Is your family worth it? Is my family worth it? Now I want to bring it on down just a little bit closer. Is anything too much to ask of me? Is anything too much to ask of myself if it will keep my children out of hell? You mean the price to keep your children out of hell is more than you want to pay? I'll sell the farm. I'll do whatever it takes. I maintain to you that no price is too great to pay to save my children from hell. Maybe you don't feel that way. Maybe you don't feel that way. Maybe you say it's their own business. If they want to go to hell, let them go to hell. I don't think you ought to feel that way because they didn't ask you to have them. They didn't ask you to birth them. But because you did, there is a responsibility to that family. Maybe I can change your mind. It's not worth all of that to keep them out of hell. Well, let's just talk about hell. Matthew chapter 13, verse 41. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels. They shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend them which do iniquity, shall cast them into a furnace of fire, and there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. What is hell? A furnace of fire with wailing and gnashing of teeth. Matthew chapter 22 and verse 13. Then said the king to the servants, bind him hand and foot. This is your child we're talking about. This is your grandbaby that we're talking about. Bind him hand and foot. Come on. I said that's your baby. That's your child. That's your grandchild we're talking about. Bind him hand and foot. Take him away. Cast him into outer darkness. Outer darkness means complete, total darkness, where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Let's take it just a little further. Just a little bit further. Let's look here for just a moment. Talking about a rich man and Lazarus. Rich man died and went to hell. Lazarus died and was carried by angels to Abraham's bosom, and the rich man in hell. In hell. But we're not talking about a rich man now. We're talking about my kids. I'm talking about my boys. I'm talking about my grandson. I'm talking about my granddaughter. I'm talking about your children. And in hell, he lifted up his eyes. Now let's just get this right down to where the rubber meets the road. In hell, your son lifts up his eyes. In hell, my son lifts. Oh God! Woo! I gotta hurry up. I can pray. In hell, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, put any name you want to there. And in hell, he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried, our children cry, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in these flames. Can we go just a little further? You got time? Talking about the man that saved his. Revelation 14, he's talking about people that miss the rapture, that take the mark of the beast. He's talking about my children if they miss the rapture. He's talking about your children if they miss the rapture and they take the mark of the beast. This is what he said. They shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone. Oh, not my child. Not my grandbaby. Tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, the presence of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and who receiveth the mark of his name. Got time for one more? Maybe just one. Goes on in chapter 19, verse 20. Talking about how our children that go to hell are going to be bound in a bottomless pit with Satan, with the Antichrist, and the false prophet. Is forever and ever and ever. The smoke of their torment ascended up. The worm never dies. Fire is not. If you could see hell right now, on the blackened walls of hell, you would see the fingerprints of those that have been there for hundreds of years, where they've tried to climb out, but they never will. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? To me, it is. How many of you say, preacher, I'm willing to be the Joseph in my family. I'm willing to be the Savior or the cause of my family being saved. I want you to stand. I want you to stand. I want you to begin quietly making your way down to this altar, and I just want you to talk to God about it. However you feel. God, if somebody's got to do it, I can't trust anybody but